Anakin Skywalker was a young human male born 42 years before the Battle of Yavin. Within the first 9 years of his life, Anakin, alongside his mother Shmi Skywalker, would serve as slaves on Tatooine before his blatant sensitivity would be discovered by the maverick Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn during the Naboo crisis. Upon being freed after Qui-Gon's bet with Watto, Qui-Gon would guide Anakin to the Jedi Temple for training. However, following Qui-Gon's death at the conclusion of the Naboo crisis, Anakin would be apprenticed to the recently knighted Obi-Wan Kenobi. Anakin would quickly establish himself as the most gifted student of his generation, progressing at a much faster pace than most of his peers. However, his arrogance and desire for control earned him few friends within the Order. Anakin would also be prone to violence and was emotionally unstable due to the traumatic experiences of his childhood. These traits would carry over and only worsen as he got older, in no small part thanks to the corrosive influence of Chancellor Palpatine. Shortly before the Clone Wars, Anakin would become infatuated by Senator Padme Amidala of Naboo, and would end up slaughtering an entire Tusken Raider camp on Tatooine following the murder of his mother. Directly involved within the Battle of Geonosis, the very first battle that sparked the Clone Wars, Anakin would step up as a legendary field commander within the newly formed Grand Army of the Republic, and would later be promoted to a Jedi General. Skywalker and Kenobi would distinguish themselves as the finest military assets the Republic had, and effectively became the poster boys of the war effort. 3 years after the Clone Wars began, Anakin Skywalker and Kenobi would be dispatched to Coruscant upon being attacked by the Separatist fleet and Supreme Chancellor Palpatine being kidnapped by General Grievous. Upon the rescue, Anakin would face off against Count Dooku one last time, and would end up beating the Sith Lord. After a fierce bridge battle and the escape of Grievous, Anakin would perform a miracle landing, saving both the Chancellor and his own master.
Another happy landing.
In a matter of days, Anakin Skywalker's life would make a most drastic turning point. After visions causing him to fear for Padme's life, combined with reaching a breaking point within his frustrations on the Jedi Council, Anakin Skywalker fell to the dark side and was dubbed Darth Vader by his new master Darth Sidious. Recruited on the eve of the Great Jedi Purge in 19 BBY, and arguably became the greatest Jedi killer of all time, sacking the Jedi Temple and slaughtering the Separatist Council on Mustafar, Vader helped usher in the newly formed Galactic Empire. However, Vader would be confronted by his former Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, and after a lengthy lightsaber duel on the volcanic world of Mustafar, Vader was defeated. Left to die in the hellish landscape, Vader suffered severe injuries. This required him to undergo a cybernetic refit in order to keep him alive. Being encased in a suit and learning that his wife had died, Darth Vader saw no other purpose than to serve Palpatine and went the next 23 years leading the Great Jedi Purge, as well as enforcing the Emperor's will. However, Vader also knew that Palpatine only saw Vader as an unfit apprentice and that his master would one day attempt to replace him. Darth Vader responded by attempting to train his own apprentice to aid him in taking Palpatine down, finally setting his sights on his own son, Luke Skywalker. It was within Luke's hands that Darth Vader was finally beaten. However, Luke chose to spare Vader's life, rejecting the dark side of the Force and provoking Palpatine's wrath. Vader stepped in to protect his son, throwing the Emperor down a reactor shaft, but not before taking too much electrical damage to his suit, causing fatal damage to his life support systems. Vader, within his final moments, returned to becoming Anakin and looked upon his son with his own eyes before succumbing to his death. This matchup shall serve and operate as the finale for Season 1 of my own Versus series, and will serve as a precursor for what quality improvements are to be expected for Season 2. The primary reasons for this was in no small part due to my good friend Deadponic, who has aided me in solving production issues and overcoming major obstacles that weighed down my previous videos. On top of this, I have taken massive efforts to improve where my teenage self started, and after learning to actually script my voiceovers and make quality improvements, I can rightfully say that most of Season 1 is horribly outdated. It is for that reason that I will eventually make a redux of most of my Season 1 matchups, to not only provide better quality in voiceover, but to also update the context thanks to the new sources made available since then. Now on for clarifying this matchup. Considering that I am talking about two versions of the same character, I found it appropriate to state which time points of them I am weighing against each other. For Anakin Skywalker, all of his appearances leading through the Mustafar duel will be accounted for within this analysis, with his actual prime being that of his final confrontation with Count Dooku on board the Invisible Hand. As for Darth Vader, his appearances from the time of first being placed within the suit through his final confrontation with Luke Skywalker will be included, with his prime being considered right before the events of Return of the Jedi. My analysis of Anakin Skywalker will be directly drawn from the prequel trilogy, including its adaptations portrayed in the films, comics, novels, and visual dictionaries, the 2003 Clone Wars microseries and its respective tie-ins, the 2002 Clone Wars video game, the Star Wars Republic comics, the Visionary comic anthology, and TCW. However, it needs to be made clear that Anakin's appearances within TCW for this analysis shall be considered secondary compared to his EU appearances, as this analysis will mostly be stemmed from Legends continuity, specifically classic expanded universe material. The only reason I am even including TCW is both out of partial obligation, considering I am including some canon sources for my Vader analysis, and because in spite of the show writing Anakin completely out of character compared to his film depictions, his combat capabilities remain mostly consistent, with the only sin weighed against him by the show being that he is underpowered compared to his EU appearances. But in fairness, every major character in TCW suffers that problem. I shall also state that the Revenge of the Sith video game will also be used as a secondary source and visual representation of his capabilities. Meanwhile, my analysis for Darth Vader will be drawn from a mix of canon and Legends material, including but not limited to Star Wars Episode 3 through 6 film, comic, and novel adaptations, Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader, the Dark Times comics, the Force Unleashed 1 and 2 adaptations and its respective tie-ins, the Shadows of the Empire multimedia project, the Darth Vader comics produced by Marvel, Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor, Star Wars Rebels, Rogue One, and Star Wars Lords of the Sith, with background information for both characters including the Jedi Path, the Book of Sith, the New Essential Chronology, the Complete Reader's Dictionary, the Essential Guide to the Force, the Essential Guide to Weapons and Technology, and the Star Wars role-playing game, specifically the Dark Side Sourcebook. I have also decided that for my analysis of Darth Vader, I will be omitting the Kenobi show produced by Disney in 2022. As a disclaimer, my issue is not that Vader lost a fight to Obi-Wan, as not only was that a likely possibility to happen within any rematch taking place between Episode 3 and 4 from a thematic standpoint, but it is something that literally had to happen to salvage some semblance of continuity from the damage any confrontation would make. No, my issue lies with how it happened, as not only were the fights poorly choreographed and edited to the point of it looking like a mediocre fan film, but they completely misrepresented both of the characterizations as well as the skill and power level both characters were in. I would even argue that the Kenobi show finally negated one of the few things I felt Disney canon had done right and not screwed up, which was maintaining consistency with the prequel trilogy characters and Darth Vader within combat capabilities. Damn it, Disney. Be that as it may, I present Anakin Skywalker versus Darth Vader, The Chosen Ones mirror war. If these two versions confronted each other in live combat, who would win?